The open meeting law requires that I notify the public that this meeting is being recorded. Therefore, please be aware that an audio and visual recording of this meeting is being made and broadcast by Boston City TV, which is a part of the City of Boston Office of Cable Communications. And the first item on the agenda is request authorization for the approval of the minutes of March 15, 2018. Motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 2, request authorization to advertise and issue an invitation for bids for the purchase and installation of parking revenue control equipment within the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park. Ed?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, Director Golden, members of the board. The staff is seeking the board's approval to advertise and to issue an invitation for bids for the purchase and installation of parking access and revenue controls equipment in the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park. This will be a joint IFB to also provide for the purchase and installation of equipment for BRA-owned parking facilities within the downtown waterfront urban renewal area. This request is actually a follow-up to a prior authorization by the board to issue a joint IFB with that approval being granted at the meeting of September 14th, 2017. Since that time, the staff has been working with both our parking manager, ABM, and a parking lot consultant to prepare a more detailed plan of equipment and installation needed at each site. At the same time, as our understanding of the scope of what is needed has grown, so too has the anticipated cost of the acquisition, the installation, and the operation of both the hardware and the software. With that, it was the agreement between budget and finance, legal, and real estate that the prudent measure was to return to the board and again seek authorization. Our current system lacks the ability to take advantage of the many available applications and outlets to drive vehicles to our available parking, and with that, to also drive revenue. The goal then of this joint IFB is to replace outmoded parking revenue equipment with a more modern, more efficient, more user-friendly, and more cost-effective system. The selected vendor through this IFB will be responsible for providing and installing new equipment, including the furnishing of all equipment, materials, and labor necessary to utilize a fully operational system along with a 1 to 2 year warranty. It is expected that the funding for the acquisition and installation of the system for both EDIC and BRA-owned facilities will be paid for through an allocation in the capital budget in a total combined amount not to exceed $1.1 million. Accordingly, it's the staff's request that approval be given to advertise and to issue a joint invitation for bids for the purchase and installation of parking access and revenue equipment for EDIC and BRA-owned facilities at a cost not to exceed a combined total of $1.1 million. I'd like to add, this action before you at this point will be later accompanied by a similar item on BRA item agenda number 13. There will be one invitation for bids to serve both BRA and EDIC equipment. So with that, my colleagues and I would be happy to try to answer any questions that the board might have.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Ed. Item number 3, request authorization to extend the memorandum of understanding with the Newton Army, Inc. for the use of streets and ways within the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park and to execute an amendment to the memorandum of understanding. Sean.
Good afternoon, Chairman Burke, members of the board, Madam Secretary, and Director Golden. The EDIC respectfully requests authorization for an extension and amendment to the existing memorandum of understanding that exists between the EDIC and Newtonomy Inc. for use of streets and ways in the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park. The amendment to the MOU will allow use of the streets and ways by Newtonomy through December 31st, 2018, and the amendment will reflect the current insurance that Newtonomy is carrying for use of the streets and ways. Newtonomy was acquired by a global company, Aptiv, in November of 2017. Accordingly, while Nutonomy maintains a distinct legal existence, it's a subsidiary of Aptiv. As a result, there's been a change in insurance. The insurance maintained by Nutonomy through Aptiv, very comprehensive, and we think it adequately protects the interests of the park, as well as the tenants and visitors to the park. And I should also note that with me is Chris Carter, who's the co-chair of the Mayor's Office of Urban Mechanics. And Chris will be able to speak to any policy questions you may have about use of autonomous vehicles in the city of Boston or the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park. And with that, I'll turn it over to Chris.
Okay, thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
So as many of you know, we have an autonomous vehicle testing program here in the city of Boston, collaboration between the city, EDIC, MassDOT, and in this case, Nutonomy. Largely, we're focused on this kind of for the three reasons that came out of the Go Boston 2030 plan: safety, access, reliability. How do we increase the safety of our network? How do we make our transportation system more accessible and more reliable? So on a national level, right, 40,000 people every year are killed in traffic fatalities. The promise of autonomous vehicles is to potentially reduce human-caused crashes that make up about 94% of those. From a reliability standpoint, how do we make sure that we're leveraging this new technology to be able to work in a climate like Boston? And then from an access standpoint, how do we make sure that we're nudging this technology to work for all of the residents of Boston and not just a select few? So that is the reason why we have partnered with Nutonomy. We've been working with them for about 1.5 years on the roadway network, and then sort of longer leading up to this project. So happy to answer any questions that people might have about the testing process that we have in place.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions on the board?
Yeah, I think the context of this MOU has changed after the tragedy with Uber and the pedestrian crossing the street with her bike in Arizona. And how can we feel, as granting this use of our streets, how can we feel confident that nothing like that is going to happen? How are you overseeing what Nutonomy is doing to make sure that it's safe for all the other people using the industrial park?
Sure. The crash that happened in Arizona almost, I guess, a month ago now between Uber and a pedestrian crossing the roadway there certainly sent some shockwaves throughout the industry and throughout cities that are testing. In Boston, what we did as an immediate response was pause all testing that was happening in the city so that we could do a little bit of a deeper dive review with the two companies that were doing operations on our roadways now, both of them operating in the Marine Park. The first thing we did was sort of go back and look through the safety protocols that we had in place through the application process and through the testing process developed in the city of Boston. This is a tiered approach that we take. So they start in a small geographic area with relatively sort of less complex roadway networks, like portions of the park, during daylight hours and during no precipitation. And then they sort of graduate as they are able to prove out that they are operating safely and get a number of miles under their belt. They can then operate during nighttime conditions. They can then operate sort of in a broader geography. So in the case of Nutonomy, at this point, they're operating throughout the South Boston waterfront. They have close to 1,000 miles of testing over the last 1.5 years, just in Boston, but they're also testing in Las Vegas and Singapore as well. So the first part was that review. The second part was we actually brought those companies in to talk through their driver training and their safety driver training protocols as well. One of the things that sort of came up in the crash in Arizona was that there was one driver in the car. They had an incredibly long shift at that point, around 10 hours, and they were potentially distracted from the roadway by some other sort of happening that's in the vehicle, sort of unclear by the video. We sort of ensured with Nutonomy that that type of activity is not going on. So they don't have personal cell phones or devices in the vehicle. They, at this point, use two operators in the vehicle. There's a safety driver that is trained and qualified and goes through sort of a series of driving courses. And then there's a passenger seat operator that is an engineer looking at what the car is seeing at all times. So we went through some review of that safety driver protocol with each of those companies. We then looked at the technology suite that they're using and how they interact with that. So in this case, they're equipped with sort of 3 different kinds of sensors on that car that is then feeding into that software system that the engineer is then talking to the driver at all times of what they're seeing. They also keep their shifts for their drivers at a manageable level at this point, somewhere between 90 minutes and 3 hours is sort of what they're out there doing. So we felt confident about that. And then again, looking at the graduated testing approach, we've put them, we think, in situations that they are able to handle based on their testing in other locations, based on the state of the technology, and in a really sort of safe environment. They're not exceeding the speed limit. That was another thing that came up in the Arizona crash. 25 miles an hour is the mandatory speed limit in most city roads in the city of Boston, and that's what they're at or below. And we had them do a detailed review of how they interact and perceive what we call vulnerable road users, people on bikes and pedestrians, and how they manage those situations, and they've documented that, and it's up on the city's website.
And is this level of detail in the memorandum itself?
So the MOU has a series of pieces that point towards that. The detail about the testing procedures that have to be in place is through the application to test at the state level. So they have to meet a lot of those benchmarks. And then they're required to do quarterly reports. And all of that, we sort of probe them on those types of questions that they then sort of share through that research. In the MOU, there's a number of pieces that point towards a testing plan and a testing process that they've agreed to.
Thank you.
Can we get periodic updates on the progress of this testing? If they're doing quarterly reports, could we get an update on those?
Happy to share those back with the board. They're publicly accessible, all of them, on the city's website right now, but happy to do a report back if that's of service.
Great, thanks.
Okay, there's no further questions, and a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Item number 4 is personnel. And Janet?
Good evening.
Teresa?
Mr. Chairman, we have several items for your consideration this evening. We have 4 appointments. Cecilia Mondesir for Finance Coordinator, Sharon Turchinsky for Bridge to Hospitality Program Manager, Angelina Camacho for Special Projects Coordinator, and Ricky Grant as Deputy Director of YOU. There are 2 employment service contractors for your consideration, Katie Leisner and Letitia Paterlini. There are 6 travel items with details in your package, and there are 3 departures, Antonio Nunez, Bridge to Hospitality Program Manager, Cecilia Nardi, Planner 1, and Allison Quinn, Special Project Manager.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. I need a motion to adjourn the EDIC meeting.
I move we adjourn the EDIC meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Meeting adjourned. The open meeting law requires that I notify the public that this meeting is being recorded. Therefore, please be aware that an audio and visual recording of this meeting is being made and broadcast by Boston City TV, which is a part of the City of Boston Office of Cable Communications. And the first item on the agenda is requests authorization for the approval of the minutes of March 15, 2018. Motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. I'm going to do the next 4 all at once for one vote. I'm just going to read them for public hearings. Item number 2, request authorization to advertise a public hearing on May 17, 2018 at 5:30 p.m. or at a date and time to be determined by the director to consider the Herb Chambers Company's Jaguar Land Rover dealership project located in Alston as a development impact project. Item number 3, request authorization to advertise a public hearing on May 17, 2018 at 5:40 p.m. or at a date and time to be determined by the director to consider the 1241 Boylston Street project in the Fenway neighborhood as a redevelopment impact project. Item number 4, request authorization to advertise a public hearing on May 17, 2018 at 5:50 p.m. or at a date and time to be determined by the director to consider the 5th amendment to the master plan for Planned Development Area number 87 and the 1st amendment to the amended and restated development plan for the sports facilities project, both within the Planned Development Area number 87 for Boston Landing in the Brighton neighborhood. Item number 5, request authorization to advertise a public hearing on May 17th, 2018 at 6 p.m. or at a date and time to be determined by the director to consider the development plan for Planned Development Area Number 114, Shawmut Ave, Washington Street project located in the South End neighborhood, and to consider said proposed project as a development impact project. Item number 6, request authorization to advertise a public hearing on May 17th, 2018 at 6:10 p.m. or at a date and time to be determined by the director to consider the first amendment to development plan for Planned Development Area Number 110, Harrison Albany Block Development Project, located in the South End neighborhood. Any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Item number 7 has been removed. And then item number 8, request authorization to disperse $1.15 million to Pablo Eduardo for the design and installation of the Boylston project located in the Back Bay neighborhood. Funds provided by Longwood Research Institute Fund, and to enter into a grant agreement. Sonell.
Good afternoon, Chairman Burke, members of the board, Madam Secretary, Director Golden. As you mentioned, I'm here today to request authorization to enter into a grant agreement with Pablo Eduardo for a total of $1.15 million to fund the design and installation of the Boylston project in the Back Bay neighborhood. With us today is Pat Brophy, Chief of Operations of the City of Boston, and the artist himself, Pablo Eduardo, who will give you a brief presentation and more information about this project.
Okay, thank you, Sonell.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Secretary, members of the board, Director Golden, thank you very much for the opportunity to address you. I'm here on behalf of the mayor and wanted to inform you that for the past year and a half, we've been working with the victims of the bombing on the 2013 marathon, and been working with the City of Boston Public Works, Transportation Department, Arts Commission to develop a design to memorialize what the tragic events that occurred there back on April of 2013. With us is Pablo Eduardo, the artist who has been selected after a discussion with the families, who has done many prominent projects throughout Boston and have been very well received, including the Kevin White statue out in front of Faneuil Hall. We'd ask him to come up and say a few words to talk to you about this very important project.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. Well, what can I say? We were chosen to make a design, 2 markers for the Boylston Street bombing memorial. We are pretty much finished with the design. It's very simple, but very elegant and, I don't know, sorry. We worked a lot with the families, and we are conveying to the public the memory of those lost, trying to convey to the public the memory of who we are or who we are still are despite the bombings in the city of Boston. And we're asking for funding so that we can get the project built. Any questions, please ask us.
Great, okay, well, thank you very much. We've been hearing about the work that you've done around the city, and it's magnificent. We're really looking forward to seeing what you produce today. Do you have any slides or anything to show us?
We don't have any slides,
Okay,
no.
we'll go on your word.
Yes.
That's good enough for
Yes.
me. Are there any questions from the board?
No?
No? Okay, so motion's in order.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you,
you.
Pablo. Thank you very much. Item number 9. Request authorization to disperse $100,000 to 6 Fenway community organizations provided by the Fenway Park Demonstration Project Community Benefits Fund, and to enter into grant agreements with said entities. Sonell.
Good afternoon again, Chairman Burke, members of the board, Madam Secretary, Director Golden. As you mentioned, I'm here today to request authorization to disperse $100,000 from the Fenway Park Demonstration Project Community Benefits Fund to 6 community organizations in the Fenway neighborhood for neighborhood beautification efforts. We received 11 applications for this round, and we're recommending that 6 applicants receive funding in this 4th round of community benefits.
Okay, thank you, Sanal. Any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Sanal. Item number 10, Board of Appeal. Are there any changes, Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Secretary Paul Hamus, and Director Golden. 30 petitions have been prepared for the next 2 ZBA meetings on the 24th and 26th. No changes at all.
No changes. Okay, any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you,
Thank
Jeff.
you.
Item number 11, request authorization to execute contract amendment number 2 with Utile, Inc. to assist in the zoning mechanisms to codify the downtown waterfront municipal harbor plan and Greenway District use and zoning analysis with no increase to the contract amount. Chris?
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Executive Secretary Paul Hamus, and Director Golden. The planning and zoning effort for the downtown waterfront district, which extends from Long Wharf to the Hook Lobster site adjacent to the Moakley Bridge, was initiated in 2013 to build upon prior planning initiatives in the downtown area, such as the Greenway District Planning Study, and also ensure that new development functioned to enhance public access and use of the waterfront, support water-dependent uses, as well as protect and activate the Greenway. There were 3 primary tasks of this planning effort, including the development of a waterfront activation and public realm plan, which involved working with the community to establish a menu of public benefits, activation concepts, and waterfront infrastructure needs for the area to provide direction for mitigation associated with new waterfront development. This plan was largely completed in 2014. A second task involved the drafting of a municipal harbor plan, which is a state regulatory planning document that relates public benefits outlined in that public realm plan to specific development project sites and exceptions to the state waterfront regulations, dimensional and use requirements for new development. Those new development sites primarily being the Harbor Garage site as well as the Hook Lobster location. The BPDA facilitated 40 meetings of a Harbor Planning Advisory Committee, which was instrumental in directing the development of that harbor plan. The board authorized submission of the plan to the state's Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs in March of last year, and a decision on that plan should be forthcoming in the next couple of weeks. The last component which needs to be completed is the development of zoning recommendations, which will function to codify the building dimensional standards established through that state-approved harbor plan. The original consultant contract with UTIL was executed in February of 2013 with the amount of $300,000. Subsequently, there was an amendment to the consultant services contract for additional services in the amount of $60,000. As the terms set forth in that amendment expired in December of 2017 before all the $360,000 was expended. Second amendment is now being requested to allow for necessary time to complete those remaining tasks and those zoning recommendations. Be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you,
you.
Chris. Item number 12, request authorization to execute a contract amendment with Hatburnford Lightning Design to produce lightning design for the Congress Street Bridge for an additional year. Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Secretary Polimus, Director Golden. On March 21st, 2017, the agency entered into a contract with Heart Ramps Lighting Design to develop a conceptual lighting plan for the Congress Street Bridge. Over the following 12 months, we've worked with our consultants, their sub-consultants at Jacobs Engineering, the city's Public Works Department, and other stakeholders to finalize the lighting plan. However, unforeseen structural conditions and lighting design challenges have delayed completion of the plan and the procurement and installation of the fixtures. In order to continue this work, staff is requesting a time-only contract extension of 12 months.
Okay, are there any questions on the board?
what are the unforeseen structural conditions?
Sure. So most of them focus on what we would be attaching the light fixtures to, including, for example, the pier lanterns that are on the bridge. They're in a variety of conditions that can support retrofits that we want to install. So we're having to kind of go through each one individually and figure out what will work in each one for the retrofit, so it's not exactly standardized throughout. So that's just one example. As far as I know, the bridge is safe, so it's just about where we're putting the lights.
Great, thank you.
And was consideration given to installing these fixtures not on the bridge itself, but on something separate, given the somewhat steadily deteriorating condition of the bridge?
I think a lot of the, all of the designs that we were interested in, they want to be attached to the bridge and how it functions in order to highlight a lot of the historic elements of the bridge. I don't know if there's another place where they could have been attached in order to get everywhere, but we're confident that we'll be able to come up with a plan that works for the bridge and will survive.
Okay, if there's no further questions, and a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just hold it, Ed, for a second. Councilor Baker, did you want to, I know you have some place that you want to have to go to, so would you like this?
Thank you, Chairman Burke, Director Golden, and members of the board. I'm just here to voice support for, it would be item number 21, which is 951 Dorchester Ave. We call it the Tom English site. Really good development, I think, going in there. The builder has agreed to allow a long time store to remain. He's going to do his best to work with him, whether if it ends up being like an affordable unit sort of deal. Very good forward thinking, and I think going to be great for the neighborhood. And also, not supposed to happen until 6 o'clock tonight, I want to talk about number 34, which is the Globe site, which is another very exciting project within my district. At a time where everything seems to be housing. They're really thinking differently about this one. This can potentially bring back the Globe site, the same amount of jobs that were there when the Globe was up and running, 3,000, 4,000 jobs. Good jobs, high-tech jobs, things that I personally don't even know what the jobs will be, but really good to deal with. The development team, again, forward-thinking. There's community space in there. There's a lot of... There'd be a lot of opportunities for collaborative thinking and a collaborative work within that space. So two really good projects. Thank you for taking me out of turn, and thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for coming. We'll take all your comments into consideration as each one comes along.
Thank you, Mr.
All right,
Chairman.
thank you. Take care. Item number 13, request authorization to advertise and issue an invitation for bids for the purchase and installation of parking revenue control equipment for BRA-owned properties. Ed?
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Secretary Paul Hemus, and Director Golden. This, as I mentioned, as EDIC agenda item number 2, is the second half of the request to issue a joint IFB. This portion of the request will accommodate BRA-owned facilities in the downtown waterfront area, specifically Sergeant's Wharf and Fulton Street. Again, we don't expect the combined cost of this initiative to exceed $1.1 million, and therefore your request is requested.
Okay, thank you. Ed, are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Ed. Item number 14, request authorization to enter into a license agreement with the New England Aquarium for the 2018 Food Vendor Services Program located at Long Wharf and Central Wharf in the downtown waterfront area. Ed?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. These next 3 items all pertain to the BRA's seasonal vending operation, so I'll try to get through them as quickly as I can while still answering any questions that the board might have. Item number 13 seeks your approval to enter into a license agreement with the New England Aquarium for the 2018 food vendor services, along with 2 one-year options, with those options being exercised at the sole discretion of the BRA. Monies raised through the seasonal vending activities in the area are reinvested in the maintenance of the area. The RFP that was authorized by the board at its March 15th meeting set a minimum annual fee of at least $25,726.16. In response, the bid from the aquarium was in the amount of $29,400. This vending location is very close to the aquarium's main entrance. During the years that the aquarium has been licensed to operate a food stand, they have complied with all regulation for appearance, cleanliness, and insurance. It is therefore the staff's recommendation that authorization be given to enter into a license agreement with the New England Aquarium Corporation for food vendor services along East India Row for the 2018 season, along with 2 one-year extensions, with those extensions being exercised at the sole discretion of the BRA. If there are any questions, I'm happy to try to
Are there any
answer.
questions from the board? Did you?
I was just curious as to why it is we only have 1 food vendor there.
When I appeared before the board in March, I mentioned that this is a relatively small universe of vendors. We are actively and robustly seeking to increase the participation by MBEs and WBEs. In this case, before the bids were received, we went through the DND list. We went through the state's supplier diversity office. There were no certified MBE or WBE vendors that offered this service, along with the trolley service, along with the merchandise. So in this case, again, we certainly tried to cast a wider net. In this case, we didn't have the success that we would hope for, but I assure you it was not for lack of effort on our part. We are actively trying to reach out. We have had a discussion with the state within the past week to try to gain their help to use some other avenues, such as the Combis system. But again, the list of qualified vendors that were operating through the state were non-existent.
Yeah, I was just wondering, apart from the MBE, WBE pieces, in other cities and parts of Boston appear to have benefited from having multiple food trucks, for example, in the same place, so that there's some variety in the offerings, and I'm curious as to why we haven't done that here. Is it a lack of space, or?
I would say it is a lack of space. It is an area that is not easy to get to. We certainly went through a licensing effort when Sail Boston was in town last year and got no responses on it. I think it's such a precise location with a number of brick and mortar restaurants that, quite frankly, it's hard to compete. But again, I give you my word, it's not for lack of effort on our part to try to cast that wider net.
Okay.
Okay, if there's no further questions from the board, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 15, request authorization to enter into a license agreement with City View Trolley Tours for the 2018 Trolley Vendor Services Program located at Long Wharf and Central Wharf in the downtown waterfront. Ed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In this case, we are asking the board's approval to enter into a license agreement with City View, Inc. for the operation of trolley tour services at 2 BRA-owned locations. At its March meeting, the board voted to authorize an RFP for space between Long and Central Wharfs. BRA has long offered these sites for the sale of trolley tour tickets. This year's request set a minimum annual fee of at least $62,224.20. The bids received from City View, Inc. for each of the 2 locations were in the amount of $62,400. We have done business with this vendor in the past without incident or complaint. Again, this proposed award will be for the 2018 season with 2 one-year options, with these options exercised at the BRA's sole discretion.
Any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second?
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 16, request authorization to rescind the March 15, 2018 vote, entering into a license agreement with Dodd House Gift Shop LLC for the 2018 Merchandise Vendor Program at Long and Central Wharfs, and to enter into a license agreement with Richard Natali for the 2018 Merchandise Vendor Program. Ed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the BRA board meeting of March the 15th, the approval was given to enter into a license agreement for the sale of merchandise at 2 BRA-owned locations with Dodd House Gift Shop LLC as the highest qualified and responsive bidder. That bid was in the amount of a combined $150,000 annually. As stipulated in an RFP issued by the BRA, the minimum combined bids for the 2 locations was $130,823.98 for both locations, based upon a 3.5% increase from the last year's fee. On April the 2nd, 2018, BRA staff received written notice from Dodd House Gift Shop LLC of their inability to fulfill the terms of the contract due to the lack of available staffing. Based upon a discussion with the agency's legal staff, it is now recommended that the director be authorized to enter into an agreement for the sale of merchandise with the other respondent to the RFP, Mr. Richard Natali of TNT's Inc. Mr. Natali's bid met the minimum criteria and price set in the RFP. As indicated in the RFP, once again, this requested award would also include 2 one-year options to be exercised at the BRA's sole discretion. Mr. Natali has operated merchandise sales in the downtown waterfront area in the past without incident or complaint. It is therefore the staff's request that, number 1, the March 15th vote to enter into a license agreement with Dodd House Gift Shop LLC be rescinded, and 2, that authorization be given to enter into a license agreement with Mr. Richard Natali of TNT's Inc. for the sale of merchandise at 2 BRA waterfront locations for the 2018 season, along with the 2 one-year options. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them for the board.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Item number 17. Request authorization to grant final designation of GFC Development, Inc. as redeveloper of 36 to 38 Colonial Ave in Dorchester for the construction of 4 residential units, including 1 affordable unit, under the Boston E+ Green Building Program, and to enter into a grant agreement with said entity for $20,000 and to take all related actions. John.
Thank you, Chairman Burke, members of the board, Director Golden, Secretary Polimus. We are excited to be seeking final designation and bringing our E+ Green Building Program over to the Dorchester neighborhood. This will be a much sought-after infill development in the neighborhood. There's not been a whole lot going on there lately, and so I think the community is excited to see this project forthcoming.
Okay, thank you, John. Any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Item number 18, request authorization to enter into a temporary license agreement with the Mill Street Cooperative, Inc. for the use of BRA-owned land located at 15 Mill Street, so-called parcel P-1A, in the Washington Park Urban Renewal Area, project number Mass R-24, for the parking of up to 10 cars. Ed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, the staff is seeking the board's authorization for the extension of an existing license agreement. Parcel P1A in the Washington Park Urban Renewal Area, as you see, is a narrow site, which is just over 3,000 square feet in area. The agreement has been in place since May of 2016 with the Mill Street Cooperative, Inc. They are in good standing with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It is therefore the staff's request that the director be authorized to enter into a new agreement for a period of 2 years at an annual fee of $6,250 for off-street parking, which represents a 4% increase from the current agreement. Any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
Okay, thank you. Ed. Are there any questions on the board?
Is this going to be the long-term use of this property, or is this the best use of this property, I guess is my question?
We have had meetings with the neighbors. There has not been an overwhelming response to try to reuse the site for anything other than off-street parking uses. As you can see, it is somewhat constrained by the size. It's probably a little smaller than it might be to reutilize it for housing. But again, we were responsive to a public meeting that was held with the neighbors. It was really the consensus that this would be the best use for it.
Okay, if there's no further questions, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 19. Request authorization to issue a partial certificate of completion for the office sports building located at 80 Guest Street in Brighton. And I'll do the second one together. Item number 20, request authorization to issue a partial certificate of completion for the New Balance World Headquarters building located at 100 Guest Street in Brighton. Any questions? Hearing none, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Raoul. Item number 21. Request authorization to issue a certification of approval in accordance with Article 80E, Small Project Review of the Zoning Code, for the construction of a mixed-use building consisting of 38 residential units, including 5 IDP units, 26 on-site garage parking spaces, and 6,670 square feet of commercial restaurant space located at 951 through 959A Dorchester Ave, and to recommend approval to the Board of Appeal for the necessary zoning relief and to take all related actions. John.
Thank you, Chairman Burke, members of the board, Director Golden, Madam Secretary. This mixed-use development is in the Columbia Savin Hill section of Dorchester, about 3 blocks from Columbia Road. The proponent, 959 LLC, and Adam Saba filed an Article 80 application on February 13th. The comment period concluded on April 6th. Now, this proposal was well received in the community. It's a testament to the outreach that this development team did, which began back in June of last year. The big thing that the community really likes about this project is the commercial component. The first being the new restaurant planned that the neighborhood is really looking forward to. The other being the return of the beloved Dorchester Market, which has operated in the neighborhood for many years and has been patronized by generations in the Dorchester community. At this time, I'd like to introduce Joe Hanley from the development team to further the presentation. Joe?
Okay, thank you, John.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon, Chairman Burke, Director Golden, Madam Secretary, members of the board, Attorney Joe Hanley, McDermott, Miller. Pleased and honored to be here today with the development team. Adam Sarba is the principal of Cornerstone Real Estate, who's the proponent. Kevin Diebler from Rohde Architects is the project architect and also a neighbor, longtime resident in the Savin Hill area. We, as John indicated, we've worked very hard as a team with the community beginning last summer, really digging in to understand what the existing conditions are of this property and how we can be part of a community-based development to kind of set the tone for the beginning of a new mixed-use development at we consider to be a really nice gateway location. We got a lot of help from the BPDA. I really appreciate John's leadership and stewardship, as well as from John Greeley and Mike Christopher and Michael Canizzo on the design. The result, after 11 community meetings, different meetings in the neighborhood, pre-file abutters meetings that were organized by us and outreach, was significant community support, and we thank Councilor Baker, who was here earlier, to attest to that, as well as the Mayor's Office and the Columbia Savin Hill Civic Association, which also submitted a letter as part of the public record. As John indicated, this site has two current uses here now. One is the Tom English bar and restaurant. The other is the Dorchester Market. Dorchester Market's a fixture in the neighborhood, and this development has been carefully designed to enable it to have a new home and to modernize and become part of the future as much as it has been a strong part of the past. The restaurant will be, or the bar and restaurant use will be changed as part of the new development, and we'll be searching for more of a food-based operator, non-chain, neighborhood-based operation, and we look forward to continuing to work with the community on that. At this point, I'd like to ask Kevin Diebler to come up and take you through the presentation, sort of discusses more in detail what this actual program is.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Kevin Diebler with Rhodey Architects. Pleased and honored as well to be here to present this exciting new addition to the Dorchester neighborhood. Come through here. Our site is at a vital intersection of Dorchester Avenue within a dense neighborhood of housing and vibrant storefront retail. This is a busy intersection that acts now as a gateway to the neighborhood for anyone traveling south into Dorchester. It is currently marked by, this intersection is currently marked by several multifamily and mixed-use buildings that residents have been using for walkable amenities, storefronts with bars, restaurants, markets, convenience stores, and the like. We've traditionally looked at sites and overlay the transit mobility. This has an excellent footing within the red line, proximity to JFK, and several bus lines. All of these transit amenities are within a 5 to 8 minute walk of the site. Currently, there exist sort of two single-story buildings. These were quickly built after a fire that destroyed a larger building several decades ago. They house, as Joe mentioned, an existing bar, but at the corner right there is the Dorchester Market. And the project team has worked with that store owner to find a home in this new development. So that's one of the sort of informative pieces of the design. So our site plan describes our intent to create a generous sidewalk at the corner, which will allow the market to thrive in a more open and vibrant storefront. Our building eases off of the side yard to allow access into the basement parking garage right here. The sort of parking situation is all going to be located below grade, 26 parking spaces that allow, again, we feel this is a ratio, 26 spaces for 38 units, which is a responsible ratio for housing near the red line. Again, the ground floor shows a generous sidewalk which allows for seating and the outdoor display of goods we see in other neighborhood centers. It's a little bit of a new concept in Dorchester, but certainly one that we see being successful here in the future. We've worked hard with BPDA design staff to, along the way with the neighborhood concerns about height. We dropped a story during the community review process, as well as made design changes, softening the corner, and then pushing the fifth floor back at the edge. All the materials we feel correlate to other buildings within the neighborhood. Each rendering here shows, especially here at the corner, I mentioned the gateway. This on the left is a large mixed-use development that was built about 10 years ago. So as a gateway, we were sort of bookending this intersection with another form. Again, the curved form sort of responds a little bit to the sidewalk, but also softens that moment. As well as the sort of view looking north. On the right side, there's an open space, so we're scaling this down as well. And again, this has been a very active process with the neighborhood, and take any questions at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions from the board?
Well, I think it's very commendable how you're keeping the Dorchester market in this building. How firm is that? How firm is that agreement? Is that definitely happening, or?
Yes. So Mr. Sabar is the owner of the market. They've been working collaboratively together. It'll be part of our approvals. It's also part of our zoning case to continue that use. And he is an integral part of this, and we think also will be a great opportunity as his business sort of evolves, but also supporting this type of a development. So they're in discussions now to formalize that, and we look forward to including whatever is necessary to assure that he remains in a regulatory manner in any documentation as well.
Great. Well, it's
that's been discussed with Councilor Baker. And
okay, great.
The other thing I would say is the residential component is this an apartment, and so Mr. Sarba will continue in ownership. So there's long-term accountability and partnership with the community by nature of the fact that it's an ongoing ownership and management.
Well, it's very refreshing to hear of a small project and a developer and a local business working together to keep the business in place, as opposed to a story of displacement and a business going out of business. So it's really great. And my one other question is, it seems like your per unit cost is lower than a lot of projects that we see. I'm curious about how you are able to achieve your lower per unit cost. Is it because the land acquisition was lower, because of the location?
So I think the number that was in the application was $6 million, but that's the estimated construction, not the TVC, correct?
I see. Okay, it seemed a little low. I was like, wow, how are they doing that?
So not including acquisition of and it's an interesting site. One of the things in the construction that we're also working with the market is to make sure that the market stays open longest, and that we sequence construction and they come back in, because it's not just the market, but it's the people who work there,
right,
and live and have lived in the neighborhood for a long time, to make sure that we do this in a way that works for them. So,
excellent, thank you.
Roughly how long do you think the market business will be displaced?
We're looking between like 6 to 8 months. That's what we're shooting for.
Yeah, and we've been looking for temporary accommodations.
Okay.
Interim accommodations as well in the neighborhood. It really has been a very positive partnership, and so.
And does this new plan accommodate load-in for the market?
Yes, and we anticipate working through that with PIC and BTD. Our site plan here does sort of allow a little bit of a widening, so loading can occur here, and a little bit of that activity could be resolved there. It's not going to all be right on the front curb. There will be some loading off of Dorchester Ave, temporary, but really sort of trash, et cetera, will come out on that side.
Okay.
Okay, if there's no further questions, then a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Item number 22 has been removed. Item number 23. Request authorization to enter into a second amendment to the Affordable Rental Housing Agreement and restrictions for the Pierce Project, also known as The Point, in the Fenway neighborhood, and to take all related actions. Tim.
Good afternoon, Chairman Burke, members of the board, Director Golden, Madam Secretary. The Pierce is a 340-foot tall building with 349 residential units in the Fenway neighborhood. The BPDA board approved a certificate of completion for this project at its meeting last month. An affordable housing agreement, affordable rental housing agreement and restriction, and an affordable housing agreement were signed between the proponent and the BRA on June 22, 2015. The Affordable Rental Housing Agreement and Restriction, or RHAR, required, among other benefits, 41 on-site inclusionary development rental units. The Affordable Housing Agreement required 1 IDP homeownership unit. The RHAR was amended on March 20th, 2017 to reflect changes to the unit numbering scheme in the building. At the request of the Boston Fire Department, the proponent has again changed the unit numbering scheme in the building and has requested a second amendment to the RHAR. BPDA's housing compliance staff has confirmed that the IDP unit locations are the same as originally approved, and only the unit numbers have changed. A rundown of the old and new unit designations was provided in your board memo. BPDA Housing Policy Manager Tim Davis or myself are available to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Are there any questions from the board?
Could you just elaborate on why our fire authorities want to change in the numbering of the units?
I don't have a 100% answer on that, but the original scheme, what I think they're looking for is some kind of internal coherence, so that they know that, you know, if you go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, and I don't know if they were satisfied with that. Tim might have a little bit more on that.
We have not been given explicit instructions why this is the case, but that seems to be the logical reasons for it.
I mean, it's not like the prior numbering system didn't have 3, 4, 5, 6.
They were using letters and numbers together and things like that, so I think they wanted it to be consistent throughout and consistent with patterns that they're now asking for in other buildings as well.
But given that the building is completed, there's no spatial reconfiguration or?
No.
Okay.
No, there's no changes in the locations of the units, the sizes of the units. So this is merely a technical thing because we had already recorded the document at the Registry of Deeds. We have to re-record it.
Okay.
There's no further questions. A motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 24. Request authorization to execute an amendment to the land disposition agreement with South Station Phase 1 owner LLC to execute an amendment to the development agreement among the proponent, the BRA and the MBTA for South Station Air Rights project. Tim.
The South Station Air Rights project is a multi-phase project over South Station containing a maximum of 2,725,000 square feet. The project has been reviewed under the large project review procedures of Article 80B. The BRA, by a vote taken on June 6, 2006, voted to authorize the director to issue an adequacy determination approving the final project impact report. The adequacy determination was issued by the director on July 19, 2006. A notice of project change was submitted to the BRA on July 29, 2016, and approved on December 15, 2016. The proposed project has also been reviewed under the Planned Development Area Review Procedures of Article 80C. On June 6, 2006, the authority held a public hearing at which it approved a development plan for a planned development area for the proposed project. On June 28, 2006, the Boston Zoning Commission approved the PDA for the proposed project and the accompanying map amendment. An amended and restated development plan for planned development area number 68, South Station Air Rights Project, was approved by the board on December 15, 2016, and by the Boston Zoning Commission on March 8, 2017. The land disposition agreement currently contemplates that the conveyance and delivery of possession of the project site would occur on or before April 30th, 2018, and that the adverse conditions period would expire on April 30th, 2018. To facilitate the development of the project and the public benefits to be obtained in connection therewith, the proponent has requested that the LDA be amended to extend each of the outside conveyance date and the end of the adverse conditions period to October 31st, 2018. Pursuant to the development agreement, the outside closing date, on or before which the closing under the development agreement will occur, is April 30th, 2018. To facilitate the development of the project and the public benefits to be obtained in connection therewith, the proponent has requested that the development agreement also be amended to extend the outside closing date to October 31st, 2018. David Perry from Hines, the project developer, is available to answer any questions you have.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Are there any questions?
What's our likely start date for construction?
I wish that was within our control to predict with accuracy. So we've made great progress since the project was last before the board. I think, as most of you know, we have several approvals and agreements required with various railroad authorities, including the Federal Railroad Administration, Amtrak, and the MBTA. And at the moment, the ones that we have the least control over and the least ability to predict when we will have in hand are Amtrak and the Federal Railroad Administration. But we're down to a very short list of remaining approvals and agreements required to proceed.
And is there any further information on the disposition of the postal facility adjacent to this?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, if there's no further questions, then a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item number 25, request authorization to issue two certificates of completion for portions of parcel R-28C located at 27 Cook Street and 29 Cook Street. Michael.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Secretary Polimus, and Director Golden. So-called parcel R-28C in the Charlestown Urban Renewal Area consists of 2,808 square feet of land and is located at 29 Cook Street in Charlestown. Paul M. and Ann M. Herrick purchased the parcel from the BRA on November 15, 1971 for the construction of a single-family house. A land disposition agreement between the BRA and Paul M. and Ann M. Herrick was entered into on November 15, 1971. On September 25, 1973, the BRA issued a certificate of completion. Paul M. Herrick and Ann M. Herrick transferred parcel R-28C and the building to William S. Grace and Dorothy A. Grace on September 27, 1973, who then transferred parcel R-28C and the building to John J. O'Leary and Anne Marie O'Leary on July 13, 1979. On June 11, 2015, the BRA voted to allow the owner, Anne Marie O'Leary, to change the use of parcel X-28C, which was the incorrect parcel number. The June 11, 2015 BRA board memorandum referred to land located at 29 Cook Street as parcel X-28C, not the correct parcel number of parcel R-28C. Parcel R-28C was subdivided into parcel R-28C-1 and parcel R-28C-2 on July 23, 2015, and recorded with the Suffolk Registry of Deeds. Anne Marie O'Leary transferred parcel R-28-C1 located at 27 Cook Street and parcel R-28-C2 located at 29 Cook Street to 27-29 Cook Street LLC by quitclaim deed, dated October 5, 2016, and recorded with the Suffolk Registry of Deeds. The original LDA was terminated by an agreement to terminate land disposition agreement dated as of September 27, 2016, and recorded with the Suffolk Registry of Deeds. A new land disposition agreement was entered into the BRA and 27-29 Cook Street LLC in connection with a single-family house to be built on the portion of parcel R-28C known as 27 Cook Street. Said land disposition agreement was dated September 27, 2016, and recorded with the Suffolk Registry of Deeds. In addition, a new land disposition agreement was entered into by the BRA and 27-29 Cook Street LLC in connection with a 2-unit residential condominium to be built on the portion of parcel R-28C known as 29 Cook Street. Said land disposition agreement was dated September 27, 2016, and recorded with the Suffolk Registry of Deeds. Certificates of completion have been requested in connection with the construction of the single-family house on the portion of parcel R-28C and the construction of a 2-unit residential condominium on the portion of parcel R-28C. On April 11, 2018, staff visited parcel R-28C and determined that construction of the single-family house located at 27 Cook Street and the 2-unit residential condominium located at 29 Cook Street was complete. If you have further questions, Jana Carlson from the BPDA Legal Department will be happy to answer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Are there any questions on the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 26, request authorization to issue a certificate of completion for a portion of parcel R-23B located at 36 Belmont Street. Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Parcel R-23B in the Charlestown Urban Renewal Area consists of 4,335 square feet of land and is located at 36 Belmont Street in Charlestown. Brian Hickey and Mary Hickey purchased parcel R-23B from the BRA on April 14, 1988 for the construction of a single-family house with landscaping. A land disposition agreement by and between the BRA and Brian and Mary Hickey was entered into on April 14, 1988. On March 9, 2006, the BRA authorized the director to enter into an amendment to the original LDA to remove a portion of the BRA parcel. The BRA also authorized the director to enter into a new land disposition agreement with Brian and Mary Hickey to allow for the development of 2 condominium units on the removed portion of the BRA parcel containing approximately 2,007 square feet of land and shown as Lot 2 on a plan entitled Subdivision Plan of Land located at 36 Belmont Street, Charlestown, Mass., dated April 7, 2005. The BRA entered into an amendment to the original LDA with Brian and Mary Hickey on April 2, 2007, which was recorded with the Suffolk Registry of Deeds. The amended LDA redefined the property as 3,090 square feet of land shown. A certificate of completion has been requested in connection with the construction of the single-family house with landscaping on the portion of parcel R-23B. On April 10, 2018, staff visited parcel R-23B and determined that construction of the single-family house located at 36 Belmont Street was complete. Therefore, it is recommended that the director be authorized to issue a certificate of completion pursuant to Section 304 of the amended LDA for the single-family house with landscaping. If you have further questions, Janet Carlson from the BPDA Legal Department will be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 27, request authorization to approve the sale of parcel R-74 located at 14 Lawnwood Place to David J. McDermott and to enter into an amended and restated land disposition agreement to extend the commencement of the construction until December 31st, 2018. Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Madam Secretary, and Director Golden. Parcel R-74 in the Charlestown Urban Renewal Area is located at 14 Lawnwood Place and consists of approximately 1,087 square feet of land. At some point since 1970, the previous single-family structure on the site was demolished, leaving it a vacant lot. The site was most recently in front of this board on July 14, 2016, receiving approval to amend the previous land disposition agreement to allow for the construction of a new single-family house. The present owner, Allison Berglund, desires to sell parcel R-74 to David McDermott, who still plans to construct the home, but the amended LDA requires BPDA approval in order for this sale to commence. In addition, Mr. McDermott has requested that the date for the commencement of construction set forth in the amended LDA be extended to December 31st, 2018. BPDA staff recommends approving the sale of parcel R-74 and extending the date for commencement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 28, request authorization to approve the transfers of property located at 47X Mead Street from the estate of Timothy F. Sullivan to 324 through 330 Bunker Hill Street and from 324 to 330 Bunker Hill Street to Bunker Hill Development, LLC. Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Secretary Polimus, and Director Golden. The project before you is 47X Mead Street in the Charlestown Urban Renewal District. The original designation was granted on February 27, 1997 to Mr. Timothy F. Sullivan. On June 27, 1997, the BRA entered into a deed and land disposition agreement with Timothy F. Sullivan, which the redeveloper paid $500 to purchase parcel 47X to be used solely as open yard space. Mr. Sullivan was instructed to record the deed and LDA with the Suffolk County Register of Deeds. The deed and LDA were never recorded, and Mr. Sullivan has since died with the deed and LDA unable to be located for recording. The estate of Mr. Sullivan petitioned the Suffolk County Probate Court to determine who the grantee should be. On February 22nd, 2018, the Suffolk Probate Court ordered that the BPDA had 30 days to reissue a deed conveying parcel 47X with the same open space use restriction to the late Timothy F. Sullivan and all persons holding title under him. On March 15, 2018, the BRA authorized the director to enter into this deed and LDA, which is being prepared now. The estate of Timothy F. Sullivan is requesting a transfer of parcel 47X to 324-330 Bunker Hill Street LLC, and for 324-330 Bunker Hill Street LLC to then transfer parcel 47X to Bunker Hill Development LLC, so that improvements might be done in connection with a future development at the abutting property owned by 324-330 Bunker Hill Street LLC. The LDA requires written approval of the BRA for this transfer to be completed. Upon performing these improvements, Bunker Hill Development will request a certificate of completion. If you have any further questions, Janet Carlson from the BPDA Legal Department would be happy to answer them for you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Any questions on the board? Hearing
I
none?
guess how are we doing going through all our LDAs? The series of LDAs seems to bring up the review of the LDAs question.
Okay, so on the LDAs, we've done all of the urban renewal areas except for Charlestown, we're working on downtown waterfront, and West End. All the rest we have. There's a few we haven't been able to find, but I've got a record of those, so we're getting there.
And how much longer do you think? Like another?
Well, I think we have to present in the summer sometime in the last 3.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 29. Request authorization to approve the transfer of a portion of parcel 1-2A of Phase 3 for the Fountain Hill Project to OFR Development LLC and to execute all necessary documents. Janet.
Okay. Chairman Burke, members of the board, Director Golden, Secretary Polimus, the action before you today is in connection with the Fountain Hill Project, which was a transfer in 1988. We transferred parcels I-2A, I-2C, and I-2D in the Washington Park and Renewal area. These parcels are near Circuit Street, Regent Street, Fountain Street, and Herman Street. So what happened was they built Phase 1. There was a foreclosure. Phase 2 was built after we allowed a transfer to another party, and Phase 3 has never been built. We've been contacted that the condo association that owns the land for Phase 3 would like to transfer it to, it's actually Kevin McGuire, but he set up an entity, OFR Dev LLC, in order to do construction of Phase 3. Oh, speak up a little bit. Sorry, can you hear now? Okay. Of Phase 3. He's going to change Phase 3 slightly, but that will require a small project review, urban renewal review, and possibly zoning relief, which will come at a later date. So today, our only action is to prove the sale from the condo association to this OFR Dev LLC.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions on the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 30. Request authorization to extend the license agreement with the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority for the Government Center MBTA Head House and to execute a permanent easement and agreement in connection with the MBTA Government Center Station. Janet.
Okay. Chairman Burke, members of the board, Director Golden, and Secretary Polimus, this action regards the Government Center Station. It's the next step we need to do. On December 9th, 2013, the BRA, the City of Boston, and the MBTA entered into a license agreement in connection with the reconstruction of the head house and associated City Hall Plaza improvements. Those are pretty much done, and the next step is that the license will expire on May 1st if we don't extend it. We are working on a permanent easement agreement that would give the T permanent rights where they need them in the City Hall Plaza, and it needs a little bit more time. So we need authority to extend the license that already exists and then also to enter into the permanent easement agreement.
Okay, thank you, Janet. Any questions on the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. We're going to move to item number 35 because it's all hearings that we can't start until 5:30. So item number 35 is the contractor will need a motion to pay the bills.
I move we pay our bills.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it, pay our bills. Item number 36, personnel. It's Janet?
Yes, Jeanette.
Jeanette? Sorry. Jeanette?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Madam Secretary, and Director Golden. We have a few items for your consideration on the BRA agenda. We have 2 travel items for your consideration with details listed in the board memos. Brian Golden and Jonathan Greeley from the Director's Office. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it. Item number 37, a director's update. Do you want to do it now, or would you like to postpone it till? We have time now.
Sure. Why don't we do it now? Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you to the members. First, I want to, we got a slide up there with some depiction of our activities last week. Last week, as part of a professional development and outreach effort to peer cities, I joined a team of BPDA senior staff on a visit to New York City to tour some development projects and to meet some of our peer counterparts at New York's Department of City Planning. We visited the Hudson Yards development, a 28-acre, 18 million square foot mixed-use development being built over the West Side rail yards with a unique and innovative financing story. It's considered to be the largest private real estate development project in the history of the United States. We also looked at the High Line, a 1.5-mile elevated linear park and greenway along a rail bed. It was created on a former New York Central Railroad spur, and it includes vistas of significant architectural work, including along its path work by the architect Zaha Hadid, who was the first woman to receive the Pritzker Prize. We passed also that day, we visited the Chelsea Market, home to one of the world's largest food and retail concourses, and multiple media and broadcasting companies are housed there as well. The following day, we visited the Brooklyn Navy Yard, a 300-acre waterfront industrial park that is home to over 330 businesses and 7,000 employees. It generates over $2 billion per year in economic impact for the city of New York. The Navy Yard shares a lot of similarities with our own Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park. It includes 3 working dry docks, and it just completed a master plan which contemplates growth from 330 businesses up to 500 businesses, and growth in the employee workforce from 7,000 up to 17,000 in coming years. We also met with multiple staff at the New York City Department of City Planning. That's New York City's primary land use agency. It's instrumental in designing the city's physical and socioeconomic framework. The BPDA and the New York DCP staff spent an afternoon discussing various rezoning and neighborhood planning efforts, including the Jerome Avenue neighborhood planning study in the Bronx, planning efforts in Brooklyn's Williamsburg neighborhood, as well as continuing the conversation that we'd begun the day before at Hudson Yards. By touring the site, we sat down with regulators and had a conversation about some of the detailed regulatory and financial framework that allowed Hudson Yards to come into being. It's an absolutely fascinating story, and the physical reality, which I must admit I had failed to appreciate before I got there, how much of it is actually underway. A significant amount of progress has been made. Again, this is a deck over 30 parallel rails, a 28-acre deck that provides the platform on which Hudson Yards rises. So it is a spectacular physical accomplishment, but will pay dividends for the city of New York.
I think the only thing missing from the picture are some board members who may have wanted to go to
ouch.
New York.
Ooh, ouch. That cuts a little close. Okay. I'll make a note of that.
You can Photoshop us in.
As you may know, we don't get out much, so this was a really important effort for us to go and see from another major American city, listen to our peers, and figure out how they do things, and whether or not that might help inform the way we do things going forward. So this was enormously helpful in our understanding of the way the rest of the world works. I also want to point out that this coming weekend is One Boston Day. It's become a tradition that is based on the desire expressed by many survivors of the 2013 Boston Marathon tragedy to pass on the kindness, generosity, and support that they saw and experienced and received on that important and sad day in the history of the city of Boston. So One Boston Day encourages random acts of kindness and spreading goodwill throughout the city, encouraging individuals to give back to the community and to each other. So this year, the BPDA is again running a sock drive. We did this last year. So many people participated, and the recipients really appreciated this small gesture. We brought the socks to St. Francis House, and we'll be encouraging everyone on staff to bring socks for the same purpose this week and this weekend. The mayor's office is conducting a sneaker drive, so we think that the socks and the sneakers go beautifully together. And we're hoping that again, by focusing on that day and thinking about others and how we can make this city and this world a better, happier place is certainly worthy of a little bit of attention this week and this weekend. So with that, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and again through to the board
just
members.
Just one thing in regards to that. I'd like to nominate a person to be oversee that effort on collecting the socks, Jonathan Greeley. I mean, this.
Second.
A resident sock specialist. We happen to have a sock specialist on our team.
No one appreciates sock finery the way John Greeley does, so we certainly embrace that suggestion, Mr.
We see it every
Chairman.
month, and that's what we talk about.
It's hard to miss.
So we're going to take a brief recess until 5:30 when we have our first hearing. So, brief recess. Thank you, Brian.
Oh, that was
reopen the meeting, and what we're going to do first, Gerald, is I have a representative from City Council, Mark Siomo's office, who just wants to say a few words on behalf of the councilor. John, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman Burke. As you said, I'm from Councilor Siomo's office. The councilor wanted it to be known that he is in support of Suffolk University's requested amendment to its institutional master plan. Suffolk University has always been a good neighbor and a friend to the city and the neighborhood. Their request would not increase the number of off-campus students, and it has the support of our community. So he wanted to read that statement into the record, and thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for coming. We'll include that into the record.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, this will be item number 31. This is a public hearing before the Boston Redevelopment Authority, doing business as the Boston Planning and Development Agency, being held in conformance with Article 80 of the Boston Zoning Code, to consider the First Amendment to Suffolk University's Institutional Master Plan. This hearing was duly advertised on March 29, 2018 in the Boston Herald. In a Boston Planning and Development Agency hearing on a proposed petition by the agency, staff members will first present their case and are subject to questioning by members of the authority. Thereafter, others who wish to speak in favor of the proposed petition are afforded an opportunity to do so under the same rules of questioning. Following that, those who wish to speak in opposition may do so again under the same rules of questioning. Finally, the proponents are allowed a brief period for rebuttal if they so desire. In an effort to accommodate all who would like to speak about the proposal, each person will be given up to 2 minutes to comment. BPDA staff will indicate when 30 seconds remain. At that time, please conclude your remarks so that the hearing may continue and others may be heard. Gerald will now move forward with the presentation.
Thank you, and good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Secretary of Police, and Director Golden. There are a couple of related but distinct actions in this board memo, so I want to just take a minute to walk you through that. First, of course, is the approval of an IMP amendment that would allow Suffolk to lease 1047 Commonwealth Avenue to house up to 400 undergraduates for 2 years and an option to renew for another 2 years. We don't typically like to see universities lease existing housing for their students. We like to see them create new housing and add to the housing stock. But a few things combined in this case to make us more comfortable with this scenario. First, that building was never actually on the market as rental housing, so there's no danger of anybody being displaced from it, long-term renters. In fact, it's been used as student housing for the last 2 years by BU. Second, there was no community opposition. In fact, we only heard support for the idea from the community. Third, Suffolk has committed to do a new institutional master plan and actively search for new permanent student housing opportunities. So this is really just a stopgap measure for them. And fourth, we insisted on a shared goal for a measurable and immediate reduction of Suffolk undergraduates living in Boston rental housing, and we've set that with Suffolk. So on that last point, we have said that the number of Suffolk undergraduates in off-campus rental housing should be reduced by a number that's no less than 50% of the occupancy of this building. So we'll meet in the fall of this year once they have occupied the building. We'll look at the University Accountability Ordinance reports. We'll see if they have succeeded in reducing the number sufficiently. If yes, then we'll make sure we keep them on track for year 2. If no, we'll find ways that they can meet that goal for year 2. In year 2, we'll meet. If they have not met that goal, then we have the option to deny them the ability to renew that lease for the optional second 2-year term. So we felt at the end of the day, this was a way that we could start to pull undergraduates out of rental housing and into a more controlled environment. The second item is a notice of project change for the building that does 3 things. It defers implementation of the Affordable Rental Housing Agreement restriction until after the lease with Suffolk is terminated. It allows the owner to convert vacant commercial space to 5 additional housing units. And finally, it allows the owner to increase the number of parking spaces. Consistent with the last notice of project change, the owner will agree that the IDP units, when delivered, will be delivered in as-new condition. So in order to ensure that an amended and restated Affordable Housing Agreement restriction with that provision and any others determined to be applicable is signed in a timely fashion, we've specified that that agreement should be executed prior to any determination approving the third NPC and prior to a certification of consistency for the first IMP agreement. So I'll turn it over to John Nucci from Suffolk University, who will tell you a little bit more about their student housing trends. And if you have any questions, I'm, of course, available.
Okay, thank you, Gerald.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Director Golden. Thank you for this opportunity to be here today. On the first part of the motion, let me just say a couple of words about our use and need for this building for housing of our students. We willingly and excitedly accept the challenge and the goal of using this building with a very tangible effort to reduce the number of students we have living off campus in the city of Boston. We take that commitment very seriously. We do our best to be good neighbors where we currently are, and obviously we'll continue to do that where we want to go. Let me just move to the second slide. Just for a little bit of context, if you look at the graph, you'll see that we have a growing number of Suffolk students living in the Allston-Brighton neighborhood. We are seeing that phenomenon over the last few years in places like Allston-Brighton, also places like East Boston and other neighborhoods. We currently house 24% of our undergraduate students. Our goal is to house 50% of our undergraduate students. We feel very strongly, and I'll elaborate on this a little bit later, but we feel very strongly that much of that additional growth in our ability to house our students may very well be in neighborhoods of the city of Boston as opposed to the downtown area, given the changes in the downtown area, the availability of housing, and the community changes and pressures that are there as well. And we think that works very well, given our location in downtown in the city of Boston, literally in the hub of the spokes of the public transportation system. So it gives us that flexibility to have students live a slight distance from the campus, 15, 20 minutes, and we'll be looking at that, and I'll say more about that. So do you have a sense of how we do it now? You see our current resident halls and their capacity. 455 students at 150 Tremont Street, that's our oldest dormitory. Nathan Miller Residence Hall at 10 Somerset Street, 345 students' beds. 10 West Street and Modern Theater, our two newest residence halls, with 281 at 10 West and 205 at the Modern Theater. Those two are located in the theater district, the other two closer to the central campus. To look at where those facilities are located, I just want to point out that if you look at the Miller Hall on the left, that is the closest residence hall to residential Beacon Hill. At one time, up until 2 years ago, all of our classroom activities, or most of our classroom activities, were on residential Beacon Hill on Temple Street. We have since changed the footprint of the Suffolk campus, and we've moved our campus away from residential Beacon Hill. That was a core planning principle of our institutional master plan that was done 10 years ago. And we have moved down a spine that runs down Tremont Street into the Lower Washington Theater District, where you see the cluster of the other facilities, 10 West and Modern Theater, as well as 150 Tremont Street. So the footprint of the university has changed to reduce impacts on the residential neighborhood of Beacon Hill. That's a core planning principle that will continue as we move into our renewal of the institutional master plan, which we will be doing very shortly. 1047 Commonwealth Avenue, located in Allston-Brighton. A description of the property, I think you received ahead of time. Single, double, triple occupancies. This is a facility that we will not be changing in any way. It is essentially the same format, the same building that is currently being used by Boston University to house their students. Up to 400 beds. We say that because we're not sure exactly yet how many we can put in there, but we do want to maximize the amount of within code, of course, maximize the amount of students that we can house there. Kitchenettes, washer dryers, bicycle rack on site for students as well. We put a high premium on our operations of our facilities, and this facility will be no different. In addition to accepting willingly the goal of occupancy of 1/2 Boston residents, we are giving priority to Allston-Brighton residents as well. That's an issue that came up during community hearing that we had in the neighborhood, and we have willingly agreed to do that. We will market heavily towards Alston Brighton students, either living at home or living off campus now in Alston Brighton, that would like to vacate the apartments they're in and move into a secure supervised setting at 1047. 24/7 security personnel at the entrance, as we do with all of our facilities. A residence advisor on each floor of the building. A full-time residence hall director on site at all times. We have already started discussions with the Alston Brighton community about ways that we can partner for community engagement to get our students involved in the community. Our students are already involved in the Jump Start program in Alston Brighton, working with low-income students in the Boston Public Schools. We want to expand that effort and move into other areas as well. And finally, the extension of what we call the RAM card program with local businesses. That's where students can take their card, their Suffolk University meal card, and use it at local establishments and local businesses. So it's an initiative that will help the business community out in the surrounding area as well, and it's quite welcome. In closing, in terms of our rationale and desire to do this, I just want to take a moment to expand a little bit on what I talked about earlier with regards to public transit-oriented housing, which is going to be, we think, our future. We are about to go into a renewal of the institutional master plan, and we are taking that sort of goal, our vision, into that process. We see an opportunity here to house up to 50% of our students, which is our goal, and to do so in locations and in facilities that are a 15, 20, maybe 25-minute commute to our downtown campus, which means looking very closely at sites along public transit lines. And we've already begun that process. We've engaged a real estate advisory firm that is working with us to identify sites along public transit lines, and that'll be a key component of our institutional master plan renewal process, which is about to start. So I wanted to just sort of signal that. So that you understand that is where we are looking. It doesn't mean we will do so at the exclusion of downtown residence halls, obviously. But we understand that the neighborhood downtown has changed since we've changed the footprint of our campus. And economically it's changed, price-wise it's changed, and there are literally neighborhoods there that weren't there 10 years ago, and residents there that weren't there 10 years ago. So working within those limitations, we've decided to expand our look, and this is not a permanent piece of that, as was mentioned earlier by Gerald Butler. This is a temporary lease for us to house students now and enable us to pull them out of existing apartments in Alston Brighton and into our facility. But this is the general direction that we'll be looking at as we move into our institutional master plan.
That conclude the presentation? Does that conclude the presentation? Okay, thank you. Well, this is a public hearing, so we'll hold questions off till after that part. Is there anyone that would like to speak in favor of this proposal? Please step up and state your name. Anyone that would like to speak in favor?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members. Pino Perez, representing the Carpenters Union. Would like to go on record in support of this proposal.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else like to speak in favor? Is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition? Is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition? Okay, hearing none. Are there any questions from the board?
Yes, I have a question. The 24 IDP units, it's my understanding that the IDP, this is really a question for you probably, Tim, that the IDP units associated with this building were not activated before because BU was using this building, and now you're going to be using this building for 3 years. That keeps these units out of the market at a time when we really need these units. So I'm wondering, what is our strategy with these? Is there a way to do these units somewhere else or get them into the market quicker than waiting for the end of this lease? I guess is my question.
This is Tim Davis, Housing Policy Manager for BPDA. We have not identified a way that we might be able to really replace those units directly. It's not necessarily my favorite position to be holding on these units out of the market at this time. However, we are trying to balance the needs of making sure we have students that aren't in our marketplace with those specific units. We are putting into place arrangements that when this lease term is over, that we will get those 24 units in as new condition. And if at some point this building continues to stay as a student residence, even beyond what we're anticipating right now, I think we would really have to have a serious discussion on how we might mitigate the loss of those units from the project.
Great, thank you.
I don't think there's much controversy around Suffolk's use of this particular parcel, but embedded within the presentation is the proposition that you're starting on a new IMP process, and that'll probably run another 10 years or something. The planning will be a year, but the duration would be for longer than that. And I have to wonder whether, given the kinds of changes that have been wrought with your acquisition of housing along Washington Street, and what in effect is the recreation of that portion of Washington Street into what feels like a shared campus as between Suffolk and Emerson, whether your emerging planning process is one that would incorporate or in some other way combine planning for the two schools in a way that would conceivably provide some benefit, particularly in relation to housing, but also other potential shared facilities for some of the other smaller campuses that are also existing in downtown, Fisher or Urban College or what have you. So is there any intention of acknowledging and embracing the fact that in effect that area has become a campus in a way that would leverage the institutional resources not just of Suffolk but of the other schools? And I raise that in particular reference to recommendations that have come out within the last 6 to 8 months to the effect that campuses might wisely consider the development of turnkey or whatever student housing developments that could meet the expectations of the mayor while at the same time leveraging the private sector resources of these campuses.
I think you accurately describe the phenomenon that occurred in Lower Washington Street in the Theater District with Suffolk University and Emerson going into the area and really contributing to a revitalization of the area that has turned it into one of the most exciting blocks in the city. In many ways, we were pioneers in doing that, and we're very glad we did. As we look at it right now, it's very much in demand by our students in terms of being a desirable place to live. We are wide open and happy to consolidate with any university on joint programming, on combining resources and initiatives, and fully believe that working together with other area universities, not just here downtown, but also in Alston, Brighton, that we can create the type of environment that you've described. And we want to do that. We will do that. We've already had some discussions with Boston University in the security area, actually, in terms of working with them to improve security, not just in this particular facility at 1047, but also in the surrounding area. So those discussions have already started, and we're more than happy to expand upon them.
Okay. It would just seem that given the general state of the higher education industry, that to the extent that you can leverage, particularly around housing resources and ancillary resources, the planning processes, this would be the moment to do that.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's a great suggestion, and we're more than open to it.
Okay, if there are no further questions, then a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
This is item number 32. This is a public hearing before the Boston Redevelopment Authority, doing business as the Boston Planning and Development Agency, being held in conformance with Article 80 of the Boston Zoning Code to consider the second notice of project change and amended and restated development plan for Plan Development Area Number 103, consisting of the development of the Parcel 9 Haymarket Hotel project in downtown. This hearing was duly advertised on March 29, 2018 in the Boston Herald. In a Boston Planning and Development Agency hearing on a proposed petition by the agency, staff members will first present their case and are subject to questioning by members of the authority. Thereafter, others who wish to speak in favor of the proposed petition are afforded an opportunity to do so under the same rules of questioning. Following that, those who wish to speak in opposition may do so, again under the same rules of questioning. Finally, the proponents are allowed for a period of 5 to 10 minutes for rebuttal if they so desire. In an effort to accommodate all who would like to speak about this proposal, each person will be given up to 2 minutes to comment. BPDA staff will indicate when 30 seconds remain. At that time, please conclude your remarks so that the hearing may continue and others may be heard. Mr. Sinatra will now proceed.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Secretary Polimis, and Director Golden. Michael Sinatra, project manager for this development. The project before you this evening is the Parcel 9 Haymarket Hotel, located in downtown, located on a 29,400 square foot parcel. This project was originally approved by this body in June of 2016. The current proposal that is in front of you is for the second notice of project change and an amended and restated development plan for Plan Development Area Number 103. All of the uses will remain the same in accordance with the originally proposed project, along with the mitigation, dip exactions, and community benefits package. The total square footage of the building will remain at 52,598, while the total gross floor area will remain at 145,000 square feet. All of this information is included in the board memo. The only changes that require any action are a modest increase in height for the hotel portion and a small decrease in height for the restaurant portion of the building, as well as a decrease in restaurant space along with some new design improvements along Blackstone Street. Total development cost will be approximately $107 million. The project will also create approximately 300 construction jobs as well as 125 direct jobs after completion of construction. The proponent has also worked with the Haymarket Pushcarts Association to provide them with bathroom and trash storage facilities as well as access to water and electricity. The second NPC and amended and restated development plan were filed on February 14, 2018, triggering a 45-day comment period that closed on April 2, 2018. A public meeting was held here in the BPDA boardroom on Monday, March 19, 2018 from 6 to 8 p.m. The meeting was well attended and the majority in attendance were supportive. 4 comment letters were received in total. 2 were concerned with the height increase. The 3rd was concerned about the restaurant use replacing the market use, all of which are included in your board packet. The development team will also address these issues in their presentation. A 4th letter was also submitted as a letter of support from the Haymarket Pushcarts Association. At this time, I will turn it over to Dick Galvin and the development team to go over the presentation in more detail, after which we would be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Secretary Polimis, Director Golden, thank you so much for allowing us to present tonight Parcel 9. I can tell you I am pleased to report that the long journey of developing this site, I think, is finally coming to a close. We're excited to be here tonight. On behalf of CV Properties, my development partner at Harbinger Development, Eamon O'Mara, and our investment partners, Normandy and Olshan. Our project is fully capitalized. We've made great progress on design issues with BPDA as well as with MassDOT in advancing those plans. And we're poised to start this project later this fall. And when we talk about the project, it's really 2 very important projects. Of course, the development of the hotel on a very significant and highly visible site overlooking the Greenway, but also I'll call it the recreation of Blackstone Street in an important historic area on behalf of the Pushcart Association and all the improvements associated with that. And we think by doing that particular project first, that will enhance the Pushcart's operation and make it a much cleaner and more successful, we think, overall operation. So we're pleased to present tonight. Harry Wheeler will go through the project quickly. Before he does that, I just want to tell a quick anecdote about when public entities work closely together and succeed. As we were doing the planning for Blackstone Street, we found out from the Boston Water and Sewer Commission that there was probably a 175-year-old water line in Blackstone Street that needed to be replaced before we could do any work in Blackstone Street. And as we got into the analysis, we realized, that could be a year off, 2 years off. We weren't sure. The quick action of that department, staff, our team, MassDOT, all came together, and that water line will be fixed in July, right after some other work to be done, which will allow us, given the votes we need, allow us to start right after that. And it was really incredible to see things done within a week turnaround in what some people may say sometimes are bureaucratic groups that don't work fast. Well, the entire team worked fast, and I wanted to tell that story because it's reflective, I think, of the can-do spirit that can happen when you want to see projects done. So with that, Harry, could you run through some slides for me?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
So, thank you, Chairman, members of the board. Harry Wheeler with Group 1. I'll quickly run through the presentation we've prepared today. A lot of which is Michael has recited already in his introduction, but some of the project stats and permanent and temporary construction jobs. 125 permanent jobs, 300 estimated construction jobs, and right now we're up to 225 hotel units. Right now we're planning it's just under that at 213 units. We have 9,000 square feet of retail restaurant space on the ground floor, which we'll quickly see in the presentation. The Blackstone Street Haymarket site is located here in red along the Greenway and Blackstone Street, where you can see here outlining the planned development area of a total of 52,000 square feet, which encompasses the green space now as well as Blackstone Street. Some slides here that show the outline of the site as it is in its current condition today, along with some existing shots of the area. I'm going to run through this pretty quickly, so if there's any questions after, happy to take anything. Looking at a transportation plan of what the circulation will be post-project, we'll be renovating and revitalizing the sidewalks around the site, as well as the reconstruction and replacement of Blackstone Street. There'll be some curb cuts here for our drop-off and entry, which is existing. New tree placements around. The directions of the traffic flow stay the same. Two-way along Hanover, one-way on North Street, and one-way on Blackstone Street, with our entrance right along the entrance here on Surface Road. Looking at some landscape improvements, we have some of the references of what the materials that we're looking at located down below. But new trees along Surface Road in kind of larger elevated landscape buffers here for strong root growth, as well as water reclamation that can hold water along the North Street and along Surface Road. There's some landscape plantings around the North Street side as well in a terraced area where there's a grade change of 4 feet, negative grade, so it's at 0 here. We drop down 4 feet as we come down North Street. So there's some elevation changes here that we're using some landscape elements to soften that edge and make a pleasant pedestrian experience. Outlining some of the improvements along Blackstone Street, this is now going to be a more market-friendly street. We're eliminating the curbs, so this will be a flush curb condition. There'll be bollards along the street to identify the roadway, new sidewalks on the hotel edge, as well as a revitalization of the sidewalks along the southern edge. This will include replacement of existing masonry sidewalks, refurbishment of the concrete, removal of asphalt on historic granite curbing, large granite slabs of sidewalk that'll be replaced, as well as the cleaning and assortment of cobblestones, and then new brick along here as it connects to North Street. So the historic intention of this sidewalk will remain. In fact, it'll be brought up to its existing nature. Looking at the Pushcart Association, this is the proposed layout of the work when it's done. So the pushcarts we've worked closely with will have their stalls. We are showing an opening here. So some of the stalls are reconfigured where this opening will access the trash for the Pushcart Association, as well as services the trash and loading zone for the hotel. We'll get into some of the planning as we move forward. It's a dark image, I apologize. but this is the proposed project site looking over Surface Road. We have a two-story, very animated glass base to the building, very much in keeping with the approved project, the first notice of project change, with an L-shaped or pointed-shaped tower to the building. 6 stories. Again, we're at 69'6" to the top of the building, which it's a modest 4'6" increase, which we'll show you in a second. Looking at the aerial plan along the North Street zone, we have our restaurant with a 1,800 square foot roof deck, retail space along the base with our hotel lobby, and a second retail restaurant space along the North Street Surface Road. And here you can see in plan. What we've done is, for the original project, we have shown their previously approved plans in the top left of these slides, so you can see the relationship of where we are today and the fact that there's really minimal changes. We are showing retail in this reddish tone, activating the Hanover Street point, as well as the corner of Surface Road and North Street. Blue is our hotel lobby public space. We have this shaded green area, which is our 1,600 square feet, which will be for the Pushcart Association themselves, for storage, offices, restrooms, loading dock, and then trash and transformer. Looking at the building elevations, you can see the 2-story base, much in keeping with the previous approvals. The majority of the building is brick. We have large punch window openings in an alternating pattern. Looking around the building, along the back side, we are also activating the point of the building here with a modest change in the brick tone, going from the reddish tone brick to more of an iron spot, and changing some of the window patternings to kind of simulate some interest and some activation as we go down Blackstone Street, and kind of dropping the building down in scale to the buildings across Blackstone Street, which you can see that coming around this back zone. So this is the elevation for Blackstone Street. Also, we're looking at some animated artwork displays that will help screen our receiving bays and kind of back of house areas, and this will be an activation artscape, which will talk about the history of the market and the history of the street itself. Quickly to talk about the height that we're looking for, the additional 4'6". This was the previously approved elevation project with its heights. Off to the right, you can see what a building section would look like in this current situation. You can see here that the previous project had some relatively difficult ceiling issues, 7'2" ceilings, 7'6", 6'8" ceilings, 7-foot ceilings. So looking at what was trying to be put in here in a 65-foot height, we reworked some of the interior, trying to keep the room count and the uses the same, and came up with a strategy where we looked at what we could take out of this first and second floor, and you can see here in yellow where this 2-story bases, we're dropping this by 2 feet. So if this was at 29 feet, we're dropping this band, and also this 1-story restaurant section, which is the view corridor from Hanover Street. We're dropping this 2 feet, and you can see here where we're looking in green, the modest increase of 4'6" to the building height to get the rooms and the public spaces to work. Just some quick elevations around the building. The top right was the previously approved project. Looking at our building today in the larger image, again, predominantly red brick, activation of retail and storefront uses. Pushcart market on market days, Thursday through Saturday, and how the hotel interact. And the market's a very much important piece to the restaurants that are going to be on the ground floor, as well as the hotel use itself. So with that, I'll answer any questions, but I'm going to turn it back over to Dick Galvin for the public benefits.
You can see on the screen, this is just a quick summary of the public benefits. You've heard about the jobs, the linkage funds that it will create. Obviously, the Blackstone Street reconstruction, which, as I said, is very important. The spaces we are providing for the Pushcart Association, ground floor restrooms available for public use, sidewalk improvements, and Harry didn't mention it, but a lot of the work in the Blackstone Street will also include, if you've ever noticed it, there's this street art that's in Blackstone Street, so we're going to actually recast brand new art and re-put it in the street, which we think is an exciting part of the project. Restoration of the Freedom Trail segment as well, to highlight it as part of that street work. Meeting space within the hotel for community meetings to be made available. Partnership with Boston Center for Youth and Families, Nazaro Center. Generation of approximately $780,000 annual in real estate taxes, and a LEED certification that meets all the sustainable design priorities of the city. So,
okay, thank you. Nope, not right now, but thank you for the presentation. We're going to get right into the public comment period, and then we'll have some questions afterward. Is there anyone that would like to speak in favor of this proposal? Anyone that would like to speak in favor, please step up, state your name.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Kevin Bogart. I'm a North End resident, and I'm a member of Local 26 Unite Here, and I approve this project.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Chairman, members of the board, Patrick Lyons on behalf of State Representative Aaron Mikowitz. I'd like to be on the record in support.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, board members, Minor Perez, once again, I'd like to go on record in support of this project on behalf of the Carpenters Union. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor? Is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition? Please step right up and state your name.
I speak partially in opposition. My name is Victor Brania. I am the chair of the Zoning, Licensing, and Construction Committee of the North End Waterfront Residents Association. More importantly, I was, for several years, a member of the advisory committee of Mass DOT. This is a Mass DOT-owned property, and I am now a member of the IAG under the Article 80 process with the BPDA. I filed an opposition letter yesterday. I don't know whether anyone has had the opportunity to read it yet. The principal issue that I raise is that this is a publicly bid project. It's not a negotiated project with the BPDA, publicly bid by Mass DOT 5 years ago. The bidder made promises based upon which he was selected as the bidder. The promises were that there would be a great one-story market hall with fresh foods, that there would be one signature restaurant on the ground floor facing North Street. Second floor uses were to include a community meeting room. There would be a respectful, quiet presence on the greenway facing the North End, and no second floor bars and restaurants. For some reason unknown to me, in the BRA designated market district, the market on this project has disappeared. It is, to my knowledge, the last vacant lot in the market district. Why this has happened, I have no understanding. I'd like to know why it happened. If there's no longer going to be a market district, shouldn't you folks be told about it and shouldn't be asked to vote to rescind the market district? If not, there should be a market here.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in opposition? Anyone that would like to speak in opposition? Okay, are there any questions from the board? No questions.
You're looking for 4 feet, 4.5 feet, this much? Why so little? Seriously,
well, I think we're trying to be in comport with a lot of the original design. We're trying to be in comport with some of the design guidelines along the Greenway. We're trying to, not radically change the project. We're here to make it functional. And so we, it's a great question, but
I thought so.
We have, there's MassDOT, there's Federal Highway, there's other agencies involved that will ultimately approve once we're past this step. So we wanted to make sure we had a change that we hoped was minimal, but still made the hotel functional.
Okay. I'm asking in part because I would be reluctant to, you would be reluctant to have to come back before us again if it turns out that 4.5 feet is insufficient for what it is you're trying to accomplish.
We won't come back for height.
Okay. And then 2 other questions. You made reference to the street art. My recollection, I can't remember the name of the artist, but my recollection is it was a well-known Boston woman artist who, Max Harries, right, Max Harries, who, there you have it, who cast in to the pavement some bronze, I think they were bronze, leftovers basically brass. From, yeah. Brass from the market. And you're saying you're going to recast.
She is, yes.
will that be the same work, essentially?
Largely the same, right? Yeah.
It will be the same work, cast from the same molds, which the artist has and is having remade, and they will be cast in a different location in a more coordinated fashion, so they're closer to each other.
All right, because they did set something of a precedent for public art in the city as being something innovative and something people could really experience.
No, there's been a pretty high level of focus on it, both in
Yeah.
working with the artists, the City of Boston Arts Council, et cetera, to make sure it's successful again.
Okay, and then could you respond to the issue that was raised about the market?
Yes, I mean, our strategy is to have complementary uses to the push cart, Boston, the public market nearby, et cetera, whether it's restaurant use or potential market. We don't know yet. We don't have tenants. We haven't even started marketing the space. So we're not precluding a market use if we think it enhances our guest experience, can be economically successful, and perhaps has food uses, et cetera. So I know it's kind of broadly defined, but we know, just in terms of what we're surrounded with, the proximity to the Push Cart Association, those uses, particularly at that Hanover Street point, are going to be compatible with, if not in concert with, a market-like operation. It could be a restaurant, I get that, but I would say we've not turned our back on the concept of market-type uses.
All right, I'm just thinking that the nature of markets has changed pretty significantly since you came before us initially. And if you look at places like Italy and the Pru and some of the other combination market restaurant venues that now exist, that there may be some very creative ways of restoring the sense of this venue as a food distribution site where, unlike Whole Foods, people eat, but they eat legally. So I would just encourage you to think very creatively about how you configure and market that space.
Member Landsmark, I would just add, Jonathan Greeley, Director of Development Review, there's been a lot of planning around this market district, and there's a real deliberate attempt here to balance a lot of things. We've got a burgeoning, successful public market. We've got a legacy Haymarket that, due to significant investment and a lot of planning by a lot of folks in this room and throughout City Hall, will have a dramatically improved presence and back of house, which doesn't exist today. You see the back of house as well as there is much of the front of house. Also, there's been a lot of work by Victor and a lot of his neighbors regarding a grocery store in the area. So there will be a grocery store as part of the hub at North Station. So there's also a lot of small shops within the North End. So there's a real deliberate attempt here to balance big, small, moderate, and we want to make sure that the nature of retail is changing. And so we know we have three dynamic, at different price points, different scales, three dynamic market-type users, and so we want to be really deliberate and sensitive to make sure that those are all successful applications. And for example, the chase of a grocery store was something that was discussed in this room many times, and for a while bounced around the Bullfinch Triangle parcels, and so that was a long-time goal of both the West End and the North End. So we think we've got a pretty good balance here, and we are comfortable that the hotel and the developers associated with the hotel will help find a good mix that contributes but does not take away from the successes we've had in that area.
Yeah. We've approved, within the last year and a half, hundreds of new residential units within about 2 blocks of this. So I would urge you to think creatively about the possibilities of a market.
Okay, if there's no further questions, then a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Congratulations. Item number 33. Raul, did you want to say something regarding this item?
Yes, good afternoon, Chairman Burke, Director Golden.
You need to read the item first. I believe.
You want me to read the items first? this public statement for hearing? Okay, sorry.
Oh.
Let me read the statement
Sure,
first.
absolutely.
This is a public hearing before the Boston Redevelopment Authority doing business as the Boston Planning and Development Agency, being held in conformance with Article 80 of the Boston Zoning Code to consider a second amendment to the development plan for Harrison Commons and Harrison Court within Planned Development Area Number 59 in connection with the 771 Harrison Avenue project in the South End, which proposes changing the 63 residential units from rental units to home ownership condominiums and adding 5 additional parking spaces. This hearing was duly advertised on March 29, 2018 in the Boston Herald. In a Boston Planning and Development Agency hearing on a proposed petition by the agency, BPDA staff will first present their case and are subject to questioning by members of the authority. Thereafter, others who wish to speak in favor of the proposed petition are afforded an opportunity to do so under the same rules of questioning. Following that, those who wish to speak in opposition may do so again under the same rules of questioning. Finally, the proponents are allowed for a period of brief rebuttal if they so desire. In an effort to accommodate all who would like to speak about this proposal, each person will be given up to 2 minutes to comment. BPDA staff will indicate when 30 seconds remain. At that time, please conclude your remarks so that the hearing may continue and others may be heard. Raul will now proceed with the presentation.
Good afternoon, Chairman Burke, Director Golden, Madam Secretary, and members of the board. With respect to the item before you at this moment, I would like to respectfully request that it be tabled until next month.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to table the public hearing for the second amendment to the development plan for Planned Development Area Number 59 at 771 Harrison Ave, also known as the Cosmopolitan, in the South End neighborhood, and its associated votes until a date and time to be determined by the director. Motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes, it's been tabled.
Thank you.
Final item for this evening is item number 34. This is a public hearing before the Boston Redevelopment Authority doing business as the Boston Planning and Development Agency, being held in conformance with Article 80 of the Boston Zoning Code to consider the proposed 135 Morrissey Boulevard project in Dorchester as a development impact project. The renovation and improvements of this building will result in approximately 695,000 square feet of gross floor area meant to attract commercial tenants, approximately 868 off-street parking spaces, and approximately 209 bicycle storage spaces. This hearing was duly advertised on March 29, 2018 in the Boston Herald. In a Boston Planning and Development Agency hearing on a proposed petition by the agency, BPDA staff will first present their case and are subject to questioning by members of the authority. Thereafter, others who wish to speak in favor of the proposed petition are afforded an opportunity to do so under the same rules of questioning. Following that, those who wish to speak in opposition may do so again under the same rules of questioning. Finally, the proponents are allowed for a period of brief rebuttal if they so desire. In an effort to accommodate all who would like to speak about this proposal, each person will be given up to 2 minutes to comment. BPDA staff will indicate when 30 seconds remain. At that time, please conclude your remarks so that the hearing may continue and others may be heard. Raul.
Again, good afternoon, Chairman Burke, Director Golden, Madam Secretary, members of the board. The item before you this afternoon is the proposed 135 Morrissey Boulevard project in Dorchester. The proposed project is located on an approximately 16.6 acre parcel bounded by Morrissey Boulevard, I-93, a DCR-owned open space known as Patton's Cove, and the Savin Hill section of Dorchester, and is currently occupied by the former Boston Globe headquarters building and surface parking. The project before you today consists of the adaptive reuse and renovation of the former Boston Globe headquarters building and significant landscaping improvements throughout the site. The renovations will result in approximately 695,000 square feet of gross floor area meant to attract creative office, technology, retail, and other commercial tenants, approximately 868 off-street parking spaces, and at least 209 bicycle storage spaces. Prior to formally beginning the Article 80 review process, the proponent submitted a letter of intent to the BPDA on November 3rd, 2017, which led to the formation of an 11-member impact advisory group. Thereafter, on January 30th, 2018, the proponent submitted a project notification form to the BPDA formally triggering the Article 80 large project review process and a public comment period, which ultimately concluded on March 12, 2018. During this time frame, BPDA staff held and sponsored 2 impact advisory group meetings and 1 general public meeting in the neighborhood where the proposed project and its various components were discussed in detail, and feedback was sought from members of the community and the impact advisory group members. The proposed project was also reviewed by the Boston Civic Design Commission during this time frame and was approved on February 6, 2018. In addition to the BPDA-sponsored meetings, additional community outreach was conducted by the proponent with area residents, local elected officials, and the Columbia Savin Hill Civic Association. These processes yielded a positive community benefits and mitigation package as part of the project, which includes a 2,500 square foot job training and mentorship space within the proposed project, the adoption of the DCR-owned Patents Cove open space adjacent to the site, which will include maintenance and improvements, a new hubway station, a $500,000 commitment to a fund managed by the BPDA to support public realm improvements in the immediate area, to public open space, and support for local organizations, all in addition to the $5.7 million that the proponent will be paying in housing and job linkage fees. At this time, I would like to introduce you to Todd Fremont-Smith from Nordblum Development to further the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Rahul.
Thank you, Chairman Burke, Director Golden, members of the board. I'm Todd Fremont-Smith. I'm with Nordblum Company. We're a Boston area developer that's been chasing this Boston Globe site for about 4 years. We finally put it under contract in December, and I think this is really all about recycling the building. It's a very strong, large concrete frame with deep foundations that go down to the bedrock, and we see a chance here, being on the red line, to bring more jobs back to Dorchester and to create a place where people can make things and do things, as opposed to knocking it down and building some sort of Wally World. So it's a very real project and intended to bring real jobs back to a very real neighborhood. And just metaphysically, it's a chance to connect Kendall Square, the new economy, with the real economy. And I don't know how to move slides. Is it this? Yeah. All right, thank you. So I'll be very, very quick. These are some of the benefits that Raul has already mentioned. So we're calling the building the BEAT, which is an acronym that stands for the Boston Exchange for Accelerated Technology. And the thesis here is that there's just no more room in Kendall Square or elsewhere in the city to do things. If you have a great idea and you're 4,000 feet in Kendall Square, but you need to be 40 or 60,000 feet, you really have to go out to Waltham or Burlington. We actually see this out in 128. And the idea is to keep those jobs in the city, on the red line, and frankly, near the workforce, because the workforce is in Dorchester, South Boston, and elsewhere. So it's the BEAT, and it's meant to have energy, and it's about making things and doing things in music, in art, and we'll get to some of that in a minute. So it's a 16-acre site. You're all familiar. It's equidistant, walking distance from JFK UMass and Savin Hill, right on the highway. The facility is already there. We think we can return this building to use within about 12 months of starting construction, as opposed to 2 or 3 years of pile driving the neighborhood. The BEAT, if you look at this is a time map of the MBTA. What this shows is that the JFK UMass stop is about 10 minutes from the downtown, from City Hall, which is about the same as Harvard Square. So if somebody wanted to leave their office in Boston or Cambridge and come check on their lab or their maker space at the BEAT, they could just jump, rather than get in the car and go out and check and get stuck in traffic, they could just take the red line, and it's 10 minutes outside the city, which is very close. The site, as it stands now, is essentially devoid of vegetation, and we've been working with John Copley to vegetate the site and to buffer the neighborhood, to create connections with the neighborhood, take down the barbed wire fences, take down the guardrails, and really invite the neighborhood into the building, literally. What you see is, if this works, let me see. Anyway, through the center of the building where the old printing presses used to be, we're envisioning a new main street, which I'll show you in a minute. This slide just shows some of the connections that we're endeavoring to make from Savin Hill back to the UMass JFK station, which has had a very industrial theme and feeling, mood, and we're trying to open that up. And it's not working. Oh, there we go. Sorry. So again, the iconic printing press hall that we all drove by at night and saw them making the newspapers. The presses have been removed. We're pulling out asbestos and sort of abating the building. And the new print hall will be in the same frame of facing Morrissey, but you get a glimpse of the new architecture, creating that new main street that runs through the building. As you can see in yellow, from the bottom of the plan to the top. Again, very large space, about 200 feet by about 100 feet, very high volume space, which will look something like this. And this is Stantec. Tom Ertz is here tonight doing most of the work on this. Very public space. We're envisioning, concerts, food, wine tastings, and this is really, because the building is kind of an island on Morrissey Boulevard, we wanted to create an internal winter garden, as it were, where people were not only tenants, but the public could come in and enjoy the building. We're targeting creative office, and we're targeting, as I said, maker spaces where we can do something real. Self-driving cars, 3D printing, robots. It'll be interesting to see how the market reacts. We're taking advantage of found spaces. This is an example of a roof deck that we're planning up above the atrium. And then just in general, I think Stantec's done a wonderful job of unifying the building, just bringing all these elements into one sort of image. And then the big battle for us is bringing natural light into the building so that people can work. This is a view from the expressway and an interpretation of what it's going to be. And and as you see in the bottom right, we're envisioning a microbrewery, a micro roastery, and any other kind of food that we can bring into the building. Hopefully we could even have a food hall here. So from the front, you get the sense that it's a very creative, very active place, very open place to the public, which it has never been before. I think that's about it.
Wow, that concludes your presentation?
That concludes our presentation, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll get right into the public comment period. Is there anyone that would like to speak in favor of this proposal? Please step right up. Anyone that would like to speak in favor?
Mr. Chairman, board members, Mina Perez, on behalf of hundreds of our members that live and work in the city of Boston, I'd like to go on record and support.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for coming.
Good evening, members of the board and Chairman Brian Golden. My name's Paul Nutting. I live in the Savin Hill neighborhood. And in all my 20 years of involvement with the Columbia Savin Hill Civic Association, I have never seen a project that has received such unanimous support as this. The entire neighborhood sees it as a win-win. We get a beautified Patton's Cove. We get a facility that we can actually use, because up until now, no one's ever really been allowed there. And it's going to bring about 3,000 jobs to the neighborhood. So I served on the IAG, my 5th IAG that I've served on, also served on the Columbia Point Master Plan Task Force, and just wanted to say that in full support of this project.
Great, thank you for coming tonight. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor? Is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition? Is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition? Okay, hearing none. Are there any questions from the board?
Just a quick comment. This is potentially one of the most extraordinarily transformative projects that I think we've ever had an opportunity to vote on from the board level. And as you've noted, the site is a little bit of an island, so all I would ask is that you consider to the greatest extent possible making it as pedestrian-friendly as possible, because access is tough there. And you've got fabulous transportation all around it, but it's not always easy to walk to. But I think this is really a great project.
Thank you very much.
Any questions?
May I also just thank Raul for guiding me through this process and through the neighborhood process, and we've met some wonderful neighbors, and I think had and many other staff members in the room I want to thank.
Okay. Well, I guess a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Congratulations.
Thank you very
Good
much.
luck. I need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I move we adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Meeting adjourned.